Welcome back, fan addicts. I'm making this little video on Wallace Wood's birthday. Woody was born on June 17th, 1927, so I want to take a look at some of his EC Comics covers today. He did not do any covers for EC during the pre-trend era, but during the new trend, he was quickly established as a master of science fiction. This is Weird Science number 9. This was his first cover for EC, and this issue also has an editorial saying that Wallace Wood was consistently winning readers' polls and was the top man at Weird Science. He also did the cover for number 10. Then Al Feldstein did the cover for number 11. But with number 12, Wallace Wood began a run of Weird Science covers that would continue until the end of the run for the title. Here's number 12. And as a trivial side note, this copy comes from the personal collection of EC artist Will Elder. Number 13. 14. And I'm out of order there. Here's 15, Rocket Ships and Dinosaurs. Can't beat that. And number 16, this was the cover that inspired Wood's later design for the Mars Attacks series. And another trivial side note, this copy came from the collection of Richard Hauser, second-generation EC fan and publisher of the fanzine Spafon, sister title to Squatront. And I have a couple copies of 18. If you watched my video on signed items, this is the signed Weird Science 18. You can learn a lot more about it in my signed EC Comics and Books video. This issue, Weird Science number 20, had a historic letter from EC fan Bobby Stewart about the very first EC fanzine ever, EC Fan Bulletin. Bob Stewart was, to my mind, the founder of EC fandom. And here we have number 22. This was the last issue of Weird Science before Weird Science and Weird Fantasy were combined to form one title, Weird Science Fantasy, due to declining sales for the science fiction titles. This copy comes from the collection of Squatront founder and publisher Jerry Wiest, and I actually purchased this one directly from Roger Hill, who was a co-founder of Squatront. Weird Science Fantasy, Wood did 2 covers for that title, numbers 23 and 27. Very classic image there. Now moving on to other titles, Wood did a very brief 2-issue run as cover artist for Tales from the Crypt with numbers 26 and 27. I think Wood would have made an awesome horror cover artist, but he got way too busy with the science fiction. And at one point he was doing 2 stories per issue for Weird Science and Weird Fantasy, as well as the Weird Science covers. He did several covers for Shock's Suspense Stories, and he became the featured artist for the Al Feldstein Preachies. So these were stories against racism, anti-Semitism, any kind of bigotry, some of the problems in America that sadly we still face. And Wood and Feldstein came in for a lot of praise and also a lot of criticism for these types of stories, but they became very well known for that. He did the covers for Shock's Suspense Stories 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. This cover has become increasingly popular in recent years. It's shot up in value, and I'm really glad I bought it when I did. In the 90s, some folks will remember after the Tales from the Crypt TV show and the plethora of reprints that were available, prices plateaued, especially for the horror titles, and collectors did one of 2 things. They would either freak out because they thought their collections were devaluing, or they would buy up as many ECs as they possibly could and complete their runs. I chose choice B, and I bought this during that time quite inexpensively. I'm glad I did. So after number 6 there, with that really legendary KKK cover, Wood returned for number 14. Then during the New Direction kick, he did covers for Piracy number 1, which I should add is not a New Direction title. It's the last of the new trend titles. Came out while the horror and sci-fi comics were still going. He did Valor numbers 1, 4, and 5. And I do not have complete runs on the War comics, but I can show you my 2 favorite Wood covers for the War comics. Two-Fisted Tales, this is so dynamic, and it's such an action-packed cover. I love this one. It's number 33. This is another comic from the personal collection of EC artist Will Elder. And as a trivial side note, these wire cutters were not drawn by Wood. Harvey Kurtzman didn't like something about the way they looked, and those wire cutters are a paste over. They were drawn by Harvey Kurtzman, while the rest of the cover, of course, is Wallace Wood. Who knows what it was about the wire cutters? Maybe someone will peel off that paste over on the original art someday and see. Here's Frontline Combat number 15. This illustrates the Wood story Perimeter, and it was written and illustrated by Wood, and the influence of the Shock Suspense Stories preaches is clear on this one. It's about a black soldier in an integrated unit who comes up for abuse from one of the white soldiers, and the anti-racism theme by that point was pretty common for EC, but it also has, atypically for EC, religious undercurrents as well. And this is acknowledged as being the first comic book cover to feature a black main character on its cover that was not a caricature of some sort. Frontline Combat number 15 was the last issue of Frontline Combat. So after the comics folded, and it was all Mad Magazine all the time at EC, this is one of the earlier issues that does still feature the EC logo on the cover. This is number 26, which was the third magazine-sized issue of Mad, and this was Wood's first cover for Mad Magazine. He stayed with Mad for years after that, and many people feel that he was Mad's premier artist during that time. He certainly was the premier artist at EC Comics if you ask people like, well, me. So there you go. Happy birthday, Wallace Wood, wherever you are.